Veteran Pathfinder players should be familiar with the world of Golarion, home to freedom-loving republics, hellish empires, gigantic rifts to the abyss, and who could forget those barbarian kings nuking themselves into the stratosphere because they just had to know what was in that crashed spaceship. I say should because we've been doing this show for 3 years now, and I'd hate to find out that some of you weren't paying attention. But the other reason is because all this wonderful lore and world building is locked away behind books so long and boring they make War and Peace look like a travel brochure. So, the goal with this series is to make Pathfinder's lore more accessible, so that people sane enough to refuse to read 10,000 pages worth of homework are not going to miss out on all the cool stuff they can include in their games. When you look at the map of Golarion, more often than not you're going to be dealing with the Inner Sea region, which encompasses the continent of Avestan and Northern Garund. Think of them as Europe and Africa. This region is the focal point of the setting, with everything else getting varying degrees of attention. That said, our story begins not here, but over at these random islands in the middle of the ocean. 10,000 years before the modern day was the Age of Legends, and specifically the Aslanti. The Aslanti were the first human civilization to lift themselves up out of the dirt, thanks in no small part to some fishy monsters called the Aboleth, who brought them civilization and magic. Now you might think that was pretty sus, but well, the alternative was to continue being snake food. With their newfound intelligence, the Aslanti discovered gods that had never interacted with humans before. They hunted the serpent folk to near extinction, unlocked the secrets of Starflight, and developed a culture that was unrivaled in philosophy, art, magic, science, and pretty much everything else. Not bad for a people that used to live in caves and bash rocks together all day. No, now the Aslanti had the biggest and they were slapping it in everybody's face. As we all know, you don't get to be that good without facing some backlash. Let's just say the Aboleth were not thrilled when the talent they had sponsored suddenly declared itself the greatest civilization in the universe. Like a DM reminding their players who's really in charge, they resorted to an old classic. Rocks fall, and everybody dies. And thus began the event of the millennium, known as Earthfall. The Aboleths showered Golarion with asteroids and the mythical Starstone, destroying the continent of Aslant and wiping out the Aslanti in the process. Well, most of them at least. One of Earthfall's few survivors was a magically gifted blacksmith and warrior named Aradin, who led the last few survivors of the Aslanti Empire to Avestan, where they settled alongside the gnomes, the dwarfs, oh and of course the elves. The elves. That was your cue. Where are they? What do you mean they're gone? Okay, while all of this was happening, the elves just f***ed off apparently. One thing that kept people going during this time was their belief in the Starfall Doctrine, an ancient prophecy that spoke of how one of the last of the Aslanti Empire was destined to ascend to godhood and bring humanity into a new age of glory. They came to believe that this messiah figure was Aradin, having already saved what was left of their people. He helped the remnants of the Aslanti establish the nation of Taldor and spent the rest of his mortal life trying to salvage and preserve the old empire's vast cultural legacy, especially its insights into magic. How he achieved immortality is unknown, but in all that time researching, as each of his contemporaries died off, Aradin remained. He was not yet divine, but he no longer aged, and he began to take a longer outlook on what would be required for the Aslanti to regain what they had lost. During this time, among his many accomplishments, he dove into the abyss and defeated the demon lord he defeated the demon lord Duran Duran, explored the very reaches of the Outer Planes, learned alien philosophies that expanded his perspective, and when he finally returned to Golarion, his goals had shifted in scope. It was no longer enough for him to simply restore his civilization back to what it once was. No, he needed to chart out a future for all of his people, by taking on the title of God Emperor of Mankind. Wait a minute, this is the wrong book, I'm sorry. Although weirdly still pretty accurate. 12 centuries after founding the nation of Taldor, Aradin achieved full divinity by raising the Starstone from the depths of the Inner Sea. A single touch pulled Aradin into the alien artifact, wherein he experienced a series of lethal trials that pushed him to his physical, mental, and spiritual limits. Aradin emerged as a living god, and upon the enormous island he had dredged up with the Starstone, he founded the city of Absalom, a shining beacon to attract the greatest poets, architects, and mystics from all of humanity's young kingdoms. Oh, and some plumber named Joe. Well, I suppose somebody has to keep the toilets flowing, and I'm not going to deal with that shit. While Aradin would continue to watch over his people and protect them from the likes of the Whispering Tyrant, or occasionally meet with his faithful in person, his focus was more and more on his domain in the Plane of Axis, meaning his people would sometimes go for long stretches without his guidance. The prophecy was not yet done with him, however. The Age of Glory it had predicted was close, and humanity waited anxiously for him to return and kickstart a golden age. But this never happened. 4,000 years after his ascension, on the day he was predicted to return, all contact with Aradin was lost. His clerics were powerless, the skies darkened, the inner sea was shaken with storms, and an everlasting hurricane known as the Eye of Abendengo manifested to the west of Garund, destroying 2 nations in its path. Up north in the barbarian kingdom of Sarkoris, a titanic black rift called the World Wound opened, seeping forth corruption and the demons from the abyss. When every god who was questioned about the fate of Aradin refused to answer, humanity slowly came to the realization that there was only one possible explanation for these disasters. Aradin was dead. The death of their paragon, the god of humanity, innovation, history, and destiny, marked the end of an age. Most of his followers went to his successor Iomedae, who took up the mantle of godhood to defend a world that was unraveling at the seams. But there was no fixing an unrealized dream. The Church of Aradin dissolved for the most part. His faithful either went on to join other churches, or desperately held on to the possessions and land he had left them. His temples fell into decay, and with them, humanity's hopes. It has been over 100 years since the presumed death of Aradin. Humans are still hanging on, but things are not what they used to be. The once noble empire of Cheliax now bows down to the Lord of Hell. The Eye of Abendengo still churns, but hasn't moved from where it spawned, and hundreds of crusaders have sacrificed their lives to keep the corruption of the World Wound from spreading. This is the Age of Lost Omens, where all prophecy has failed, and the people of Golarion must find their own way in the world.